perseverance. Loyalty, my great spiritual teacher used to say, is the first law of God. Most people are fickle. They change their jobs, their spouses, their friends, their beliefs, their ideas, not because of any new expansion of awareness, but because they lack the simple power of perseverance. One must be loyal to one's principles and not allow oneself to be ruled by sentiment. To be loyal to others and to one's assumed goals in life, not for sentimental reasons, but in the name of principle, is the way of divine progress. Perseverance can be difficult, for in every undertaking there is a certain amount of dull routine. Don't be ruled, therefore, by likes and dislikes, but do whatever has to be done. If it is right, let nothing intervene until the job is finished. And let's affirm together, I will finish what I set my mind to do before leaving it for something else. My word is my bond, so also is my resolution. I will finish what I set my mind to do before leaving it for something else. My word is my bond, so also is my resolution. A little quieter, I will finish what I set my mind to do before leaving it for something else. My word is my bond, so also is my resolution. And whispering, I will finish what I set my mind to do before leaving it for something else. My word is my bond, so also is my resolution. And silently, I will finish what I set my mind to do before leaving it for something else. My word is my bond, so also is my resolution. And please pray silently with me. Though the sirens of distraction call me to turn aside and relax the sternness of my dedication, keep me steadfast on my path, Lord. My golden life is Thee. And from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Ananda. Entitled, With every stroke of my prayer, I move nearer to Thee. Father, swimming in the sea of my craving for Thee, I find myself beaten by the winds of severe trials. Floating on cresting waves of pleasure and pain, then sinking down into the depths of indifference. I still keep looking for Thy shoreless shore. With every stroke of my powerful prayer, I move nearer to Thee. Never shall I give up. Thou Thyself, I know, dost look for my coming. And from the autobiography of a yogi, drawn from the chapter, Years in My Master's Hermitage. I always was thrilled at the touch of Sri Yukteswar's holy feet. Yogis teach the disciple is spiritually magnetized by reverent contact with the master. A subtle current is generated. The devotee's undesirable habit mechanisms in the brain are often cauterized. The groove of his worldly tendencies beneficially disturbed. Momentarily at least, he may find the secret veils of my lifting and glimpse the reality of bliss. My whole body responded with a liberating glow whenever I knelt in the Indian fashion before my guru. Sri Yukteswar affected me similarly. If I entered the hermitage In a worried or indifferent frame of mind, my attitude imperceptibly changed. A healing calm descended, the mere sight of my guru. Every day with him was a new experience in joy, peace, and wisdom. Never did I find him deluded or intoxicated with greed or emotion or anger or any human attachment. The darkness of Maya is silently approaching. Let us hie homeward within. With these words at dusk, Master constantly reminded his disciples of their need for Kriya Yoga. A new disciple occasionally expressed doubts regarding his own worthiness to engage in yoga practice. Forget the past, Sri Yukteswar would console him. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until anchored in the divine. Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now. I don't remember exactly when, but it was years ago that I was feeling the need for encouragement. And I don't remember if I read this in a book or if it was in a magazine, I don't know, but it stuck with me. And it's with me to this very day as a true inspiration. There was this woman who was healthy initially, but karma struck, and it struck with enormous force. And whether she was hit by a car or perhaps had a stroke, I don't remember. But such was her condition there in the care facility that the only way that she could communicate was by blinking her eyes. That was it. And her caregiver, knowing, perhaps her caregiver knew her before, she was completely disabled in this way, knew that she was an extraordinary soul, a woman of great heart and always wanting to serve. And so when this happened, then the caregiver noticed that she was blinking her eyes, and there seemed to be some that she was trying to communicate in some way. And so they devised a very, very simple system by the caregiver having a whiteboard and then having the various letters and so forth there on the light whiteboard. And so after a while, they devised a system where perhaps the left eye blinking would be A, and two blinks would be a B from the right eye, and so on. And so there was communication. And so it became apparent with this communication that she wanted to help other people. Incredible. Here she was completely flattened by this karmic test. And yet, such was the love of her heart, truly an unconditional love. She wanted to help others. And so it became apparent that she would be able to. But how? And so in time, she developed a correspondence with other people, others that were, again, paraplegic, that had, various, physical difficulties, etc., that were such that they were, discouraged, depressed, in so many ways. But when they found out about this person, they were absolutely astonished because they knew that there was something going on that was extremely rare in this world of seva. And here was this person who could have easily just finished with their life, shut down completely, and that would have been it. It would have been a self-imposed misery. But that was not what she decided to do. And so she was already a radiant being, but now she became all the more so, truly an angel, because she, in communication with these, various people, maybe it was across the globe, I don't know, but she was really, really experiencing a true communion with them. They were so grateful and so astonished that this person flat out would have this willingness, this enthusiasm to share in this way. And it's a very, very important thing from time to time, remembering, as Gainamata said, count your blessings, skip the rest. Obviously, that's what she did. She introspected, knowing that perhaps this was going to be a lifetime sentence confined to her body in this way, but she was having none of it. She renounced the limitation. She renounced the karma. Master himself said, learn to outwit your karma. That's exactly what she did. And so in this way, she had a life that was very, very fruitful. And I don't know the end of the story, but perhaps for decades, maybe her entire life, then she served in this way. And there are so many examples, because the shadow glorifies the light, of souls that pay no attention to what they have, somehow drawn. We all draw our karma. They don't want to fall off the path, so to speak, into negativity and to limitation and to self-absorption. They just do not want to go there. Been there, done that, perhaps in that present incarnation, perhaps in previous incarnations. They do not want to go there. And that's why Yogananda was so keen on his disciples always embracing a positive attitude. And also, he was very, very strong on those around him, the direct disciples, to remain silent, because he said, the spine is the altar of spirit. Silence. Silence is God, and God is silence, so that they would take advantage of the opportunity, being, of course, with this great master, having the great good karma to pierce the veil, to go inside, to have an inner life, to spend time, not with the chattering mind and with the senses and all that can completely overwhelm, as we know very well, any of us at any time. Be in that place of silence. Be in that place where we can, at a moment, be replenished. One time Yogananda was challenged by a disciple. Can you draw inspiration at will? He said, yes, take down this poem. There's a beautiful poem that's in the Whispers from Eternity, which I just read from, where he was talking about doors open everywhere. And it was interesting that a journalist said, I can't help, I believe it was a journalist out of England, I can't help to quote, he was writing an article, one particular poem. And it was that poem that Yogananda just drew from the ether. Yes, take down this poem. And that's the fruit of attunement. As we grow in our attunement, we find that really we don't have to be thinking about problems. In every problem, there's a solution. There is no obstacles, as Yogananda pointed out, only opportunities. And so in that way, we strengthen our will, and you might even say lock our will, that we want to remain in that place of seva. I have a wonderful video that I would highly recommend. It's the life of George Washington Carver. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. You look at his face, it's a meditation. That's the joy of the saints. They've got that kind of power. And he was such a man. And his was not an easy life, not at all. He was a black man. He was there serving in the South in a university there, a black university. And he was a genius. And he would go out early in the morning, 4 in the morning, to get his instructions from God. And there was a wonderful story where he asked the Creator, who he was in intimate terms with, tell me about the universe. Give me the secret of the universe. And the voice was, well, that's a little much for you. Maybe you can consider a different prayer. Well, okay, well, the mysteries of the earth. Well, that's a little bit better. Finally, it got whittled down. Well, Lord, how about telling me the mysteries of the peanut? Okay, fine. And he ended up coming up with 300 inventions of the peanut, including my favorite, peanut butter, and revolutionized the South. At that time, there was a pest, the boll weevil, that was coming from some great distance away, that was just about ready to devastate the prime economy of the South. I'm talking about, of course, the South America, not South America, Southern America, the Deep South. And he, bit by bit, was able to educate the locals, and he didn't differentiate between a person who was black or white. It made no differences. We're just children of God. And he was able, bit by bit, and it was not an easy task, to wean them of their cash crop, which was not going to be a cash crop for long because the boll weevil was going to devastate it, and he knew that, and grow the peanuts, grow sweet potatoes, grow these various, because at that point, the soil was so depleted because of the lack of rotation and so forth of the various crops that even if the boll weevil hadn't made its appearance, the soil was dying. And so George Washington Carver, again, though he had incredible obstacles, being a black man, just getting an education was truly a feat. And he worked really, really hard at getting to the point where he really was able to tune in through intuition, through his scientific genius, to help people in ways that people really were quite shocked, especially the Caucasians. There was one particular time when he went to a committee there in the Senate in Washington, D.C., and they, being very prejudiced, though he was a genius and he had done amazing things up to that point, that's why he was invited in to share some of his scientific discoveries. They said, you have 10 minutes. Well, he knocked their socks off, so to speak, by what he was able to share. So then they said, well, we'll give you another 10 minutes. And another 10 minutes. And finally they said, you can have as much time as you want. Because what he was sharing was so mind-blowing for them, because it was so simple, but absolutely right to the point, because he knew, because of his attunement, he knew about the plants because he talked with the plants and they responded to him. And so we have, again, these great geniuses. Here in India, Luther Burbank was one. Luther Burbank was very close to Yogananda. He passed in the early 20s. And when he passed, Yogananda said, because he was a dear friend and dedicated the autobiography of Yogi to Luther Burbank, an American saint. He said, I would walk all the way from New York to California, where Luther Burbank lived in Santa Rosa, where he had his gardens, if I could just see him one more time. And so when we get disheartened because we feel that the Maya has been unleashed, then we can be heartened that not only these saints that are, relatively recent, not to mention Krishna and Moses, and the ones that continue to fill this earth with their vibrations of light and healing power. But these great ones, they've never left the scene. Never, and they never will. They participate in this Leela, which I find astonishing, because they could all, once they are liberated, say, I'm not coming back to this place of duality, too much suffering. But such is the compassion of these great ones, as Yogananda said, I'll come back 1,000,000,000 times, even for one, that they come back again and again and again and again. And so when we find ourselves bogged down, easy enough, with the international scene, the domestic scene, with our next door neighbors who at 1 o'clock tend to forget what time it is. And we're trying to get some rest, and they're having a loud party, and it's been going on and on. Although we've talked to them, they don't seem to be sensitive to our needs. Bit by bit, we begin to appreciate that God does everything for the best, and everything that is given to us is meant to help us. No exception. Test it, and you will find it to be the case. Every single time. I remember years ago, I was a monk, and my aunt was my second mother. And we lived in Southern California. And finally, I got a seclusion. And as Yogananda said, seclusion is the price for greatness. To spend that time inside exclusively with God, whether it's a half a day or longer. And so finally, and it was back then, as it continues today, to be a struggle to get into seclusion, because we're busy people and we enjoy that. We love to do our karma yoga. And so finally I got into seclusion. I was living in a very primitive American style teepee at the time, and thought, seclusion. Within 24 hours, the head monk Nitai came and said, your aunt has had a heart attack. That was it for my seclusion. Well, the thing that happened, and I was happy for this, and I considered it a grace, as I do to this day. There was no resistance at all. None. It was just, I love to serve. I love to meditate. I love to be in seclusion. But trusting that God does everything for the best, it was no problem. And I raced down to Los Angeles, and that was my seclusion. Kind of a different one than I had planned on, but nevertheless, so sweet. This same aunt, she wasn't a good woman with a huge heart, but she wasn't necessarily a religious person, perhaps not even spiritual, but still a big heart. What can I say? That's everything. And so one time, because, and I believe it was that during that period when she was in the hospital recovering from the heart attack, when she recovered, she said, I have a story for you. I thought of you when this episode occurred. And I said, well, what is it? I was curious. She had never told me a story before, but we had spent lots of time together. She said, there was this woman who was just there doing the housekeeping, mopping the floors. And she had a radiance to her. And so my aunt was a psychologist. So she was very curious as how this woman, an older woman, a bit frail, how she could have this radiance in doing this job. And so my aunt loved people, and so she felt it was going to be okay to ask this very direct question. Excuse me, but you seem to be a happy person. How can you maintain this when you're doing this day after day? You're just mopping the floor. And this lady shocked my aunt. My aunt was not prepared for this response. The lady said, I do it for the love of God. My aunt had to table that because she didn't know what to do with that, but she said, my nephew will appreciate it, which was me. She was doing it for the love of God. And so for us, bit by bit, we begin to appreciate that we can keep our life very simple. As Master said, refashion life ideally. The more we can be childlike, not childish, that does nothing, but childlike, to keep our hearts open, to keep our minds bright, to care for one another as we would care for ourselves, the more we find that there is a flow of life. And of course there is. But there's another flow of life, as we well know, and as yogis, we fight against it, to draw our energy down, to contract our energy. And when that happens, then it's a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. But we watch ourselves. We're also the jnanis in that watchful state. so that we're not invaded and attacked, because the Maya doesn't sleep. God doesn't sleep, the Maya doesn't sleep, and of course it's all God in this Leela. And so it's always looking for ways to take us off our center, to find ways for gravity to bring us down. And so we find really that in order, to emphasize the point, in order to keep our energy lifted, we have to stay alert, and we have to be very, very strong in our perseverance. And in that way, we find that we are able, incredibly, miraculously, to stay in that state. As Yogananda said, my life now has become an unbroken inspiration. We can begin to dream of that state. We have it now on a soul level, but to have that integrated experience, the human and the divine, then we find that more and more we're able to act as instruments for God. So, God bless you. Roma, here she is, sends her love. Every once in a while we have an interesting dynamic, and it's sweet of Divine Mother to work it out this way. Last Sunday, I wasn't here. She was caring for me. And I had some kind of hay fever, and I think that the hay fever, which I get pretty much every year, turned into a virus, and I'm very happy now, have my health reclaimed. It was a couple of days of just mild issues, but still, there it was. Well, I don't think that hay fever is contagious, because Roma said she's never had an allergy in her life. And so, for better or for worse, I think I gave it to her, though we were being very careful. And now I'm caring for her. Better than both of us being down at the same time. So no complaints. But please keep her in your prayers. We'll do a arati now, and we'll be singing it a cappella. Okay? And so please stand, and we will have our arati.